On today's podcast, we dive into the journey of Avro Deb. From real estate finance to marketing focused MBA to creative insights partner at global market research giant Ipsos. Avro is a wealth of knowledge and, of course, insights. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Learn about empathy, having a big job with kids, how to be a leader that develops star contributors, plus, learn about the market research industry, and, of course, ways to build your growth mindset. Welcome to Possiblaw. I'm Sal Carranza. I'm a former lawyer, hence Possiblaw. I believe developing an entrepreneurial mindset is the cheat code to success and the future of knowledge work in the age of AI. Through our guest journeys, we will learn how to succeed in any project, company, and role, and develop the skills required to leverage technology in an augmented world. Not a lawyer? Don't worry. What we learn here applies to everyone. And if a former lawyer like me can figure it out, so can you. Let's get into it. I'm excited to have Avro Deb on the podcast today. He is a marketing strategist and audience research expert at Ipsos. No idea if I said that right. I can't wait for everyone to hear his interesting journey, insights into success, being a great dad, a good human being, and on the business side, how to leverage audience research for success. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Sal. Nice to be here.
So we'll see where today goes. It's usually a winding road towards a bunch of lunacy, but that's kind of the fun of it. I think where I'd like to start is where I start with everybody. You are more than the business professional that, everybody sees on LinkedIn or wherever. What do you do every day? Like, what brings you joy?
Question. I mean, at this point, our daughters are good friends, right? A lot of my time is taken up by my two young children, but at the same time, that does bring me a lot of joy, spending the time with them and doing stuff with them and being able to be there for, all the moments that maybe my dad wasn't able to be there because working conditions were different, just the lifestyle was different, all that kind of stuff. So, really enjoy spending time with them that way. And honestly, a lot of my time in these last 5 years has been either kids or work, but trying to, as they get older, carve out some more stuff for myself. Was very much a practitioner of yoga prior to having children and having the world turned upside down, and so definitely trying to get back into that for multiple reasons: physical, mental, spiritual reasons, all of it. So starting to crack into that again. Definitely want to increase that. Cooking. I got a new grill from a friend, so I've been messing around with that one. Trying to get used to that and just trying new recipes, things like that. We're a family that we like to eat. When we lived in the city, used to go out a lot. Obviously, in the suburbs, a little more limited that way. And now it's again with time and everything. It's like many nice restaurants am I going out to with these kids? Or trying to find babysitters. So just trying to recreate some of the stuff at home and do that as well.
There's a lot of good in there. I think one thing that people forget about when they have kids is that they're also human beings a little bit and that it's easy to get wrapped up in the my kid needs X hundred things and I don't exist anymore and nothing else matters, and you sort of lose some of that. And when you lose some of that, you actually kind of lose some of your skill in being a parent because your stress levels are really high. You have no moment of de-stress. But I've also found that I'm similar to you. I love spending time with my daughter. It brings me actual joy. It's not just fake. My dad was around as much as he could be, but it was great when he was there. And I wanted to make sure that when I was raising my daughter, I could be there as often as possible. And so I think that's something that really resonates with me. How do you find the time to do that when you're a fancy senior executive at a marketing strategy company?
I wish I had a great answer for that. I mean, I don't. Besides, I just find the time, and it's like, here's this. I rarely let work take away from my evening with the kids unless something crazy is going on and it needs to. I'm lucky where we're not fully returned to office, so I have the ability to work from home quite a bit. And it's like, all right, if 5 o'clock hits, I'm gonna take a break from 5 to 8:30 and walk upstairs and just spend that time with my kids. And then if I need to come back down from 9 o'clock to 11 midnight, like less than ideal, but that's when I'd prefer to then get back into the work that I need to do at the time, because I just don't want to like be downstairs working when everything's going on upstairs and then come up to say goodnight and yeah, okay, now my night's over and I have free time, but like I also didn't get to really see my kids. So um it's definitely not easy, and probably gonna be traveling a little bit more coming up here soon and all that, but you just find the time, and it's when you have it, I think it's making sure that that time is quality as well, and that I'm really present. I'm not sitting there going upstairs and checking my email consistently while I'm doing this. It's kind of like, you know what, this is my time with the kids. And in general, I try to be that as a little bit just have boundaries. Because otherwise, when things start bleeding together like that, especially work, it just feels like you're working all the time. And so I'd rather be, hey, I'm gonna like be out. So I'll let my team know that I'm gonna be out. Like I'm going upstairs, eat dinner, spend time with the kids. I'll be back online at 8:30. If you need me, just send me an email. If you need me then, I'll hop back on, whatever it is. But I think like the quality of time is equally as important, if not more than the quantity of time that's spent. And so if it is going to be a little bit shorter some days here and there, let me just make sure I'm really locked in and focus on them during that.
I heard a concept in there that I try to apply to everything, which is be present in whatever you are doing in that moment. And I think that's really great advice for anybody who is getting into the parenting game with high expectation careers. Is that something you learned from your family? Is that something you've practiced through yoga? Where did that come from?
Just being present. I think it's just the harder way of over time, and just kind of realizing it getting older. I think yoga definitely gave me that perspective of just how much being present matters. Even if I'm trying to solve a problem, it's like trying to do that in the midst of doing all these other things just doesn't happen. So it's like, okay, I have something in front of me. Let me focus on that, step away from it, but still be there, meditate, do yoga, something, and then all of a sudden the light bulb turns on, right? But it's like the same idea of limiting distractions so that you can actually your brain can stop with its PR, whatever's going on in your head, and you drill into that. I think it's something that people talk about a lot, and the more you're aware of it, maybe you come across that idea more of being present. But I would say for myself that yeah, getting into yoga meditation, that aspect of my life like definitely brought a lot of that to it. Like I'm naturally like probably more of like an anxious person. Like I actually have like like prescribed ADD, so like I'm dealing with that too. So it's like a storm in here a lot of the times. And like luckily like not projecting it that way. I think like I get a lot of like, oh, you're so zen and calm. Like yeah, spend an hour in my head and see if you agree with that. But just being able to like calm that and bring it down to like I'm doing this. Let's do this now. And that's done. Because multitasking, in my opinion, and I think from evidence base, is kind of a myth, right? It's you're just stopping and starting. There's ramp up time, switching time, all these things involved. So don't mess with that. There's one thing in front of me. Let's just do that. Do great on that. We'll find time for everything else. That's the other thing too. At the end of the day, with the job and everything, I'm not an EMT and I'm not a surgeon or anything. That I'm not dealing with life and death situations. And so sometimes I got to sit back and be like, hey, listen, what are we doing here? Right. I had a client a long time ago who was it was craft. She was on the cheese business and her line was, we're talking about cheese people here. We're talking about cheese here, people. We're not saving lives, right? And that type of stuff matters too. So I think if you have that perspective and realize that okay, work isn't this thing, it helps you be able to turn off and focus on like other things that you need to at the moment. And then you come back to work and you apply the same thing and then you're focused on work and get that stuff done.
Yeah, it's funny. Anytime anybody gives me stories like that, all I can ever think of is the old Allen Iverson sitting at a press conference being like, we're talking about practice, man. Practice. We're talking about practice, not the game, practice. And, you can push back on whether practice is important. Jordan was always big on practice is what lets you do great. So I get all that world. I think the thing that I always try to remember that in that is there's usually something else more critical, more important out there. Do your job, do it well, but have the contextual opportunity to understand where you sit, and that'll help you personally just in that own storm in your head of like, where am I spending my time and why? And that doesn't mean that you can't choose work sometimes or family sometimes or watching a basketball game or whatever it might be. It's just giving you that context is really important. I want to take a step back a second because I think for most people the idea of yoga is a little bit more mainstream, but I think most people think of it from the perspective of physical work in some capacity. Go to a studio, do the moves. Maybe it helps with your, breathing and physical stuff. But I know there's another side to it that you've spent more time delving into. And so I thought it'd be helpful for the audience to like understand when you say yoga and how that helps with your mental fortitude. What do you mean? Where does that come from?
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting. I feel like this conversation were happening, 5 years ago, before kids, before pandemic and all that. I was much more into that world and in tune with that side of myself, way more of a regular practicer and all that. While that's gotten away from me a bit, at the core, I still have that, and I understand the ability for it. And it's always, I need to get back to that because I understand the benefits. So a lot of this stems from, I said, I got diagnosed with ADD as an adult, and the storm that I had, right? I know it's there, and now there's a label to it, which in itself helped because it's a little bit like a bell going off and being like, okay, like it shouldn't be that hard, but things have been hard because there's something going on here, right? And then I was reading other people in forums and stuff, and they're describing things that are exactly like me. Again, like okay, I'm not alone. All right, so that starts helping. So there's a better way. So what is that better way? And like a lot of paths are just like breathing exercises. You calm yourself, you calm your mind, meditation, all this, right? So initially I was like, meditation. That's what I want to get into. To be able to sit down and do that is not easy, right? I don't know that you've tried it, but I'm sure a lot of people have. And for some, maybe you pick it up right away, but it's like anything else where you have to practice at it. But at the same time, just to sit quietly and calm yourself when you're not used to it, like, it's hard to do. So what yoga does here is it brings all that together. It's breathing exercises involved because inhale, exhale is very intentional of where you're doing it in the pose. The poses themselves, you're focused on what your body is doing, and you're almost physically meditating in that way. You're paying so much attention to form and what you're doing and what the next step is, that like that was almost my shortcut or cheat into meditation, because I can't sit and do this, but if I can like move around but mentally still be like focused on this one thing that I'm doing, then basically I'm reaching a meditative state. And so like you start getting the taste of that, and then all of a sudden meditation became easier. And all right, so what I'm trying to do is get my mind into the state that it's in when I'm doing yoga. So I sit down, and again you go back to, okay, now I'm doing the same breathing. I'm not moving with asana, but I'm like doing the breath control. Okay, like calm down, and then all of a sudden like you're in that state. And I think for me, I just needed that. Like again, just the way the mind works and like how much going on in there, just to be able to calm that and have that ability to like, pick out ideas and thoughts and things that are going on in there rather than them just getting lost in the sea was huge. And then, I mean, there's just so many benefits. It's like whatever you get into, it's you're stressed out, okay, chill out, do that, get in a good mindset. And, I mean, I think yoga goes a lot also beyond asanas and poses, right? Like it's the entire thing is it's a whole way of life in general, right? And like again, I don't know how well I can speak to all the other aspects of it, but like that's I think like a better way to consider yoga too, is like it's not just like trying to get me in shape. Like that's like a side benefit of it, but not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for some to reach like, some sort of spiritual enlightenment or connection with whatever you believe in. But I think in general, it's a little bit more, let me become more self-aware and in tune with myself. I think there's a lot of ways to talk about it in like professional aspects and career, but to me, a lot of it is about becoming more self-aware, and like, that's foundational to me. And when you start doing that, then a lot of these other things about doing more, being better kind of fall into place, if that makes sense a little bit.
It does. I'm a big believer that the happier you are personally, the better you're going to work, right? I mean, I think that's lots of studies have proven that out. I mean, everybody wants to pretend that this idea of like happy employees is a myth almost because it's easier to sort of yell at people, I think. I don't know, but at the end of the day, it's just not true. And while you can pretend to be happy at work, maybe you're doing something you're passionate about, but you go home and you just aren't in a good mental health space. And that could be for lots of different reasons. Either your home life, or you're just lonely, or your marriage isn't great, or your kids are driving you crazy every day, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, but figuring out a way to find your moment is actually really critical to this ability to do more and be better in life, right? And so I think for me, one of the things that always was interesting about yoga and any other discipline that focuses on really thoughtful, intentional choice, your breathing, your thought, your time, is that it helps you in every part of your life, in work, but also at home. How do you manage that? And I also think what's interesting is it's not per se religious. It
Agreed.
doesn't have to have a spiritual connection to it. You can do it just simply because it helps you with your own mental fortitude. How did you get into it? Did you stumble into it? Is this something you did every day of your life growing up?
No, not
Like,
at
where
all.
did this come from?
Yeah, I mean, so some of it was seeking out, some way to calm the mind. But what it was more of is like, my late 20s, I was in a big gym rat phase. So I was
Gym
lifting a
bro,
lot of
gym
weights.
bro.
Yeah, I was a gym bro. Um, and it was this no non-negotiable every day I'm going type of thing and all that. What resulted from that was an injury. So coming off that, it's like, all right, so now I'm sitting here. I can't do the stuff that I was able to do before. I'm losing some range of motion. Went to PT, all that stuff, but like, things still bother you. Let me give yoga a shot. I've heard, hey, people rehab from that. It's a little bit gentler. You can kind of modify, do things at your own pace, that kind of thing. Plus the whole aspect of like the mental relief that it could potentially give. But that wasn't the total initial reason I went into it. It was kind of, hey, my ankle's really like messed up. Like I want to try to like get this better. And I can do this at studios, I can do this at home. It doesn't take a lot of like, equipment or anything like that. And so it was like a little twofold, like initially like physical and hoping, hey, let's see where this goes mentally. And then it like, okay, I'm seeing benefits on both here, mentally even more than I expected. I'm going to continue down this path. And this is one of those, once you start doing it, you keep doing it. And it's interesting because again, like gym phase days, I've definitely worked out to the point of what you would call like runner's highs, things like that. It's different with yoga, and I can't. It's hard to explain it. It's more like you get in like, this meditative state, and I've tried to tell my friends that like I really think you should start doing this. They're like, oh no, I run a lot. Like I've experienced that before. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, like from someone who's experienced both, like it's different, and it gives you a different sense of like calm and understanding and like oneness almost. And like it's not just I feel great after this like run that I did. It's okay, no, I feel more centered, and I feel like like that. It's a tangible benefit. Is it easy to get to? Maybe not. Maybe you're not going to get it the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month doing it. But like, if you keep doing it and you're practicing breathing and all that, you'll get it. And then you're, oh yeah, okay, like that's like at least where I'm trying to go. You'll get glimpses of it, right? And then ideally, as you do it more, you just kind of that's like becomes a part of your lifestyle, and you can reach into that deep down. All right, I'm about to go into this crazy meeting or something like that. All right, remember that state, get back in it real quick. All right, you're good, centered, grounded. All right, let's go and do it. And then like you feel invincible when you walk into that meeting.
I mean, that seems like fantastic advice for any portion of your life. What I heard in there was growth mindset. You wanted to learn something, you saw an opportunity that might help you, you engaged in it, you applied it to your life, right? And maybe if it hadn't worked, you'd move on to the next thing because that's kind of how it works. But it did work for you and you've continued on that process. And I think the other thing I heard was consistency. Whatever you're doing, if you do it haphazard every once in a while and then you complain that you don't see any results, that's why. Have some consistency in what you're doing. And so I think that's really good advice. I've also tried as I've gotten older to be more open-minded on some of the concepts of energy or how the universe interacts with you, whether you think about it from a spiritual perspective or just simply like the thread through everybody. I think paying attention to kind of all the different things in your world, whether you are on a whole one end of the spectrum, where you're like, I have crystals and chakra and
Yeah,
all
right,
the
right.
rest of it, or you're just simply somebody who says, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day meditating just so I can find some clear headspace and connect with my mental self, physical self, external self. And so I think anybody out there listening, for me, what I got from that was dedicate yourself to something new, try it out, see how it works for you, and then incorporate it into your life and you'll get good results. I think that's just generally how it works. I would love to transition into getting to better understand how you got where you are today. And so I like to start that journey first kind of in college. Did you always want to do marketing? Was that, you were a kid and you were telling mom, I want to sell advertising, or I don't know, whatever it was, right? Or was this a thing that you stumbled into? How did you get into this?
Yeah. So no, I was one of those kids that probably like didn't. If you ask like what do you want to be when you grow up, I'd be like, I just rich, not want to do anything. Like no good answer on like how to get there, but that's what I wanted. Yeah. No. So that's it wasn't linear like that for me. Like my dad, so I'm like first generation. My parents came over from India to the US in 1975. for the obvious more opportunity, better life, all of that. And my dad was a civil engineer, very, very prideful, very much had the brain of an engineer, what the mathematical mind and all that stuff. And so, he sacrificed a lot for us. And I was close with my dad, and he gave good advice and everything. But in his mind, in terms of profession, it was engineer, doctor, or nothing. That's kind of how I was raised, right? And so I didn't know any better. In high school, I'd want to be an engineer, like my dad. Interned at his company for a summer. I wasn't doing any engineering work per se, but I was exposed to it, exposed to the environment, the people, and I was like, absolutely not. There's no way. Like, there's no way I'm doing this as a career. So then it became, all right, so what am I doing? I was interested in marketing and advertising, just like intrigued by it, but that wasn't the real thing to my dad. It's like it's fluff. There's probably a way of thinking is like he's kind of right. It's maybe not so real, but whatever. There's an essential role for it. And so with that engineering, marketing, all this advertising in mind, happy medium became finance, became business with a finance degree. So that's what I studied in college, and I kind of specialized in real estate finance. Graduated in '04, went into real estate, first residential, but quickly transitioned into commercial because that's what I wanted to do. I was a commercial underwriter. So in Chicago, like underwriting large apartment buildings, not all large, some of them could be 4 or 5 unit places, like mixed business and all that, but larger portfolios of buildings all over the city, things like that. And it was very interesting. It was fun. It was a different type of environment, very type A, times of it, like almost boiler roomish, you know what I mean? Like that kind of mentality. Definitely fun. But then 2008 hit, right? And we all know what happened there. Look, The Big Short is fully accurate as far as I'm concerned. It's like a very interesting movie because I remember things playing out that way. I remember brokers bringing deals to me and me being like, this is ridiculous. And then being like, just call the bank and sell it in. And like, okay, fine. I'll do it. Like, it's my job. I sell it, and I talk to the bank, and the bank's like, "Yeah, we'll do it. Like, we'll give you this. We'll give you like 80 basis points over this." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, are you really okay? Fine. Like, if you're gonna do it, do it." At the end of the day, you could be like, "All right, I got a little bit of blood on my hands from that because I didn't stop it." But that's what the world was at that time, right? And so 2008 hit, and all of that hits a wall. Like, it's done. That way of working is entirely stopped. And at that time, there's just like where are you gonna go? Like as a commercial real estate owner, right? It wasn't like one city suffering or something. It was like a big like national thing where like everything is kind of on pause. Like Lehman Brothers is gone, like that type of stuff is going on here. Um, Found myself in a position where they're like, look, like we can't guarantee a role. Like, do you want to take this package? Or do you want to like roll the dice and then not have a package potentially in like a few weeks from now? So I took door A, took the package, left, but now it's like, okay, what am I gonna do? Um, and I interviewed for some like writer-ish type roles, maybe different things. I'm like, is this really what I want to do? Started talking to people about like, hey, like it's kind of interested in marketing, kind of like at research in general, because I just like I'm always like, why do people do the things they do? And I think like market research gets underneath that a little bit. And there was some aspects of that in my underwriting job when we were putting together like a proposal package. It's like, what are the demographics of the people that live in this area? What are the stores that are around there? We were looking at Google Maps to look at cars in the parking lot to see, what are we dealing with here? Um, and so I was like, maybe this is a time to like all that side. And I interviewed with a couple companies, but it was a hard sell in terms of like your background isn't in this. Your industry is in the toilet right now. How do we know that if that turns around in like a year to 18 months from now that you won't just jump back? It's a lot to invest in a person, right? And I'm like, I understand that perspective, but I'm not. But what are they going to take my word? So then I'm like, all right, what's the quickest thing I can do here? Let's go back to school. Let's put my money where my mouth is. Specialize in marketing. It was a weird time of year, so I was like, what's the fastest thing I can get into? Loyola's MBA program was there. I was like, I talked to a banker who had gone there. He's like, look, like it's fine, but what you need to do is make connections, like go in there, network with your professors. And like that was my main goal. And ultimately that's what led me here. I was doing a special research project with my professor. I believe it was like why males research so much before they make a purchase. I think that was like the essential topic we were getting after. And it went well. And then she was like, hey, look, I have a friend who works at Ipsos. Do you want me to just like connect you? I was like, okay, fine. They called me in for like, hey, we have an internship role. Do you want to do it? I was still finishing up school. I interviewed and they're like, okay, actually, we want to give you a full-time role, but we know you have school, but we need you to start right away. And I was like, oh man, okay, all right, we're gonna do both. We're gonna do both for a little bit. So like, worked full time, and then like luckily the classes I was taking were nights, so it was like work until 5, classes from 6 to 9. Did that for like 8, 10 weeks, something like that, and then it was over. And It's almost 14 and a half years ago, which is crazy. I'll hit 15 at Ipsos in August. I mean, that's I've been here that long. Like that was once I finished that up, I never left. Within Ipsos, taken some different paths. Started in like how tracking works, like an equity work, like how are we perceived in market? How is that shifting over time? But then started dual rolling into that and like creative testing, and then slowly left tracking behind and have now been pretty exclusively in the world of creative testing, copy testing, advertising communications research for I don't know, 7 years or so now.
I'm always fascinated every time I talk to somebody because it's almost never a linear, I did this and I went to that and
Yeah.
that's where I ended up. And I think that ends up creating a much more multidimensional person, employee that has all these different skill sets. I would imagine even the beginnings of engineering coupled with finance and business were actually probably pretty good background education for doing ostensibly data analysis and marketing and understanding people, right? How was it that you gained your ability to sort of adapt and push through? Is that something that you got from your parents or was that inside of you? The reason I ask is that it's kind of this running conversation in society right now. How do you find people that don't need to be told 100 different things how to do it? How do you push through your own mental, pain problems to get to the other side? And I haven't found a single thread, but it seems like this self-motivation, willingness to adapt and move forward is really important. Where'd you get that from?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question because I don't know that I've specifically identified it as something I want to develop and then nurtured it in that way. It's probably something more subtle than that. It's probably a little inherent, but there's probably some subtleties in it. I mean, whether right or wrong, a lot of it is, look, I understand the sacrifice my parents made to come here, and how big of a move that was. And ultimately, they did it for us. They did it for me and my sister, right? We weren't born at the time, but they did it for their future children and like the lives that we could have. And my thought on a lot of this was just like don't mess it up, kind of, right? Like I've gotten like certain advantages throughout life. Like it's we weren't like super rich or anything like that, but like you know what I mean. Like went to a good school. I had a dad who would like sit there and like help me with my like trigonometry homework and all these things. Like other kids didn't have that stuff, so like I had these advantages. And it's like, look, all I'm being asked to do is not drop the ball in a really bad way, right? And so if my parents, my dad can come over and not it's not his native language and come here and establish himself as an engineer and be successful and do all these things, then why can't I do these things that are in front of me, And it's not that hard. I think like some of it is inside and it's having a sense of pride too, and like what I do, like I want to do a good job on it. I don't want to like, half-ass anything. And I think a lot of times maybe I don't do things because I don't want to half-ass it. I'm kind of like go big or go home, and so a lot of times maybe I'll just go home, and maybe that's not the right way. But again, I don't want to like just do a crap job and be like, yeah, that's it, it's done.
I don't think most people who have achieved success, who have ambition, have actually done a lot of self-reflection of how did they get where they got. It just seems that as I talk to more and more people, success is one, luck, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Right time, right situation, right parent, right sibling, right college, whatever it might be, tied to a willingness to move forward, to do stuff, right? And why some people lack that, I don't know. And what's interesting to me is I think most people, like the vast majority, 90+% of people, work hard. They work hard even when they're doing jobs that I remember doing in high school I hated, right? Like bagging groceries
Oh
or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
digging holes or like doing whatever, they work hard at it, they do it. As long as they find some meaning in it, maybe not the job, but in why they're doing it or they're trying to provide for their family, most people work hard. And yet there's still this gap in some people where they just don't. And I don't know what generates that. It's something that I kind of worry about a little bit with my daughter because she's ostensibly going to be given pretty much everything, right? And was my drive come from similar to you, right? Like immigrant father came in here, worked hard, saw how many jobs he had, me having to pay for college on my own, all those things? Or is it something that you can teach? I don't have an answer. I don't know, but it's why I ask every single time because I think it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. I mean, and I think like, coming for your daughter and stuff, a lot of it is like something you hit on earlier about settling too, right? I think it's that being more well off or being able to provide more opportunities in itself, I don't think is necessarily something that will breed laziness almost, if that's what we're getting into. But it's gonna be how you act with her in that with those tools that you have available to you now. If you were just like, I don't know, just doing whatever, not around and just here, take this money, go do this, go do that. Like, okay, fine. But she's seeing you and your wife work hard, right, on a daily basis. Yes, we have a very good life and we can provide a lot and we can do these different types of things. But that's because you guys are working so hard, right? And so if I want to continue this on and bring that to myself when she doesn't understand the concept of you guys being gone, but when you guys are gone, or like when she's on her own at least, or like her family and all that, like she'll have that to tap into and be like, I had like good people to observe over the span of my like formative years to like instill this in me and so like I feel like in that way it's probably a little bit of that too, like maybe we're a little bit more sensitive to because it's like, oh, we know that our dads are immigrants and all this stuff that they gave up, but like at the end of the day they were also just like hardworking people and like we saw that and we saw what that led to and the lives that like we got. Again, like I think like yeah, there's people that have way more charmed lives than me, but overall like it was pretty easy. It was just like don't mess up, like don't really mess up in a bad way and I should be okay. And like, I'm thankful for that. And so like that's I want to be in that way too.
Modeling behavior, I think, is a really good way to talk about it. And it's actually part of professional life too. And I'm curious, do you manage a team?
I do.
Are
Not a big
you
one, but like it's like 4 or 5 people right
are
now.
you a modeling behavior manager? Are you hey, I need to be kind of in your ear, helping you go through this stuff? How do you think about managing people?
Yeah, no, 100% modeling behavior manager. Like I don't like micromanaging. I don't like being in people's ears and all that stuff. Like obviously if whatever they need, I will provide for them. If they need time and everything, I will always make myself available and be there. But I don't like the idea of being a micromanager. And I've been lucky where the people that I've managed have like been able to latch on to the behavior that I'm modeling and kind of like go with it and pick it up. And again, I think some of it is like seeing the success of that approach, like dealing with a difficult situation with a client or going into a presentation where it's okay, this is going to be bad news and they're not going to like it. Like, how are we going to do this? And seeing me be able to go in, command the room, and then leave it with everyone in a good mood and be like, okay, all right, we know what to do. Like, then I think that it's like you build credibility and it's like, all right, he handled that very professionally. Like, that's what I want to get to, because at the end of the day, it's a little bit of that too, where, and now I might be going off on a tangent a little bit, but a lot of me I want to set them up for success too. And it's sort of like raising kids in a way, you know what I mean? I want to do everything I can for you. So ultimately, you're even in a better spot than I was. And I'm pretty sure there's a person that's working for me now. I wouldn't be surprised if I was reporting to her a few years from now, and that's great. I'm just like, hey, just remember me when it's time, when you're in charge and you're cutting budget, just remember who I was. But and maybe that's a part of how I learn mine too, right? Just watching my dad or certain people in my life and the way they handle things. No one was sitting me down and being like, you got to do this and this and this and this. And so it's okay, you're not always going to get that. And so again, this is how I've worked. I've had success. I've been here 15 years, been through a lot of situations that could have been rough, but got through them in the right way. And, people are there witnessing it. And then they're like, okay, that makes sense to me. You hope that they pick up something from it. And, again, luckily the people I've managed have, and it hasn't been an issue.
I think a consistent thread through everybody I've talked to is if you focus on improving people instead of bringing them down, it's better for everybody.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, not everybody gets that kind of manager, which is, I think, why you get this classic way of people talking about you don't leave companies, you leave managers.
Mm.
And part of what I'm hoping to achieve with this podcast and a lot of the stuff I do is just help people be better in business and how they function. Because I think if everybody approached it from a perspective of finding joy, of improvement, of bettering people, everything would work better. Everybody would be more productive. We just would have a better system. And unfortunately, we just don't have that all the time. And especially right now in our world, politics aside, we have a lot of voices of this idea of lionizing people who endlessly work, are unkind to the people around them, are focused on only money and the bottom line instead of something more beyond themselves. Yes, still strive for ambition. Yes, still look for success, build great things, but you can do that without being a total asshole. I don't know why that's become such a prevalent idea in our society. And if I can tilt at windmills on this podcast and talk a little bit about it, I'm going to keep trying, but I love to hear that from you. I also am curious, you talked a little bit about how you've made it to where you've made it through bad times and good times. And I've always thought that it's pretty easy to succeed when things are going great, whether it's you or externally, I should say it a different way, whether it's you that did the work to get where you are or it's just external benefit, it's all going well. It's pretty easy. But when it's hard, how do you get through that struggle? How did you learn to work through that instead of just sort of shutting down?
I mean, I guess like shutting down just wasn't really an option for me because it's your move after that, you know? Like one of the tougher parts that I've been through in like my post-college life is like that situation with the real estate broker, right? It's getting laid off. Like that wasn't something I was expecting within my first 2, 3 years of joining a workforce, you know? But there it's like, okay, I'm 25. Like, what's the step here, right? I'm not gonna move back in with my parents, and then what? And then what's the next step after that? You know? So it's this whole idea. It's almost like natural selection, right? What are you gonna do? You're either gonna like cave and fall back, and I don't know what that answer is, or you're gonna continue moving forward and finding a way and like getting through and bettering yourself, even if you're not bettering yourself. To me, that's the thing. Like I can't wrap my head around what that other option is besides trying to figure it out and move forward and just get through it. And again, I think like some of it too is like just knowing the perspective. Yes, it feels huge now, but really like how big of a deal is it? And like has someone encountered this before and gotten over it? Yes or no? Yes is almost always the answer. Okay, who is that person? Or can I also do this? You know what I mean? Something I used to say to my direct reports is, what's the worst thing that could happen to you at this job? And ultimately, the answer comes around to, I could get fired. Okay, fine. Do you know other people that have been fired or let go from our company or companies similar to this? Yes. Do you know that they have other jobs somewhere else? Yes. Okay, so if that person was a clown in our eyes, and they were managed out or whatever, but they picked up somewhere else, where's the future for you as someone who is better than that person already? Right? Okay. So you're good. You know that at some point or another you can find another job if you're like eliminated from here. Now start operating without fear, right? And like just keep that in mind. There's always going to be someone else that has gone through this, and like keep that perspective. And like if you know them, great. If you don't, that's also fine. And like if you're again better than them in certain ways, then you know you can do it. If someone that's not as quality as I am in certain aspects, and I know that tangibly, but they've landed on their feet, then why can't I either? You know what I mean? And so keeping some of these things in perspective, like how bad is it at the end of the day? And like I still want to do things like in life, right? I want to travel, I want to do this kind of stuff. So it's like what's ultimately the way I'm gonna get there? It's like to go back, get over this issue, figure out a way around it, and like just go. And sometimes you just need to like have a good network, talk to people of like how you get over those things, like wallow in your sorrows for a little bit, but like get over it and then go.
If you want to continue building your entrepreneurial mindset and enjoy our content, we would love for you to subscribe, hit the bell, follow along. You can also find us on our Substack, Possiblaw. Abrazos. I heard a bunch of different things in there of the idea of operating without fear.
Yep.
So powerful. I think too many people, especially young people, get stuck in thinking of everything as if it will be bad instead of what if it is good.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a powerful insight that I think everybody should take away from today is if you just focus on the positive, you're probably going to be okay. Even if it goes negative, focus on what could be good. The other thing I heard in that, which is kind of a thread that we were talking about earlier, is organizations, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in a big corporation, a professional, is you have to find doers. I'm obsessed with this idea of doers, people who just act without the need to get told the next 7 steps they're supposed to do to get something done. And if you don't have enough of those doers in your organization, it really suffers. I think one of the reasons startups tend to succeed, even when there are huge competitors in the space, is because they are comprised essentially entirely of doers. Because if you don't do something, there's no company.
Right.
Right. So you just
Right.
kind of have to move. I think organizations that have managed to succeed and evolve and grow, the large ones, have people like you. How do you find that in somebody when you hire them or manage them?
That's
Is that
so
something you
tough.
can do?
That's hard. That's like $1 million question, man. Like I feel like
Kidding?
we,
I know.
yeah,
That's why I keep asking.
yeah. I don't know how you like really identify that without having access to history of like how they've been. You know what I mean? Or in the world of like references and stuff, you talk to someone and get to that. But to be able to like really pull that out in an interview is kind of tough because we're also conditioned to interview in a certain way, right? And play off certain things that are they a big deal? Well, they are because I'm going to talk about it as a big deal. I think we've been lucky as a company, and I think like a lot of it is like the culture we've built and somehow been able to find doers. You fail a lot, and I think the key is to recognize that quickly and cut bait and just go back into the pool and try to get someone that isn't going to like or that maybe has a better likelihood of succeeding. And look, on this theme of like, modeling, I think a lot of it is like top down too. And I was lucky at Ipsos. My first manager, who is absolutely amazing, and another one of these, oh, she's going to be running the company. She's going to be running the company. Well, she's president now. She's one of the North America presidents. So the rate of promotion, like for a while I was like with her right hand man, and then it was just like boom, 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 and I was like, okay, I'm still sitting here, but that's okay. Um, but the stuff that I learned from her and all the people that she touched, all those people that were on her team at a certain point or another, they are now the leaders of the organization and they have her mentality, and we push that down.
I think it's a learning thing to some extent from my perspective, in the sense that I meant being a doer. And that's how you kind of figure it out. At least that's what's worked for me, which is the sense that there are people who get assigned something they've never done before. And their first instinct is to say, I don't know how to do this. Tell me or teach me. Right. Which is fine. And I don't want to make it seem like junior people just coming in the industry, you shouldn't ask. You should ask all kinds of stuff. But there's a version of a person who maybe does that, but in parallel or even before they reach out, they start sort of tinkering.
Mm,
They Google stuff, they read an article. And these days they use ChatGPT, whatever it might be, to try to get some edge to see if they can move something forward. And then there's also this piece of it where maybe you're not learning something fundamental to your job, but it's a little bit outside of your scope of duties or whatever it might be, or it requires you to like skip level 2 people over or whatever it might. And people that aren't doers stop. They just stop. They're stop points. People who are doers are, it doesn't even dawn on them to like wait. They're like, what do you mean? I know that person. I'll just go ask that person. And
mhm.
that is something fundamentally about kind of learning and being willing to act. Again, I agree with you. I don't know how you figure this out other than spending time with people. I think it's a very people-centric piece of it, but I think it's so important. And I also think you're not the first that has said this idea of like, once you identify it's just not going to work, it's time to move on. Lots of famous people have said that. I think the one caveat I've learned in that is it is really expensive to hire and fire
It
and
is.
then hire again. Like, it's crazy. Nobody seems to understand it. I mean, nobody, quite frankly. Give people an opportunity to improve. The caveat to that is if they don't have a critical piece of something, 100% agree with you. It's not going to work for them and it's not going to work for you. And so you got to move on and do something different. Let's talk a little bit about your business in general. One of the things I try to do on this show is give entrepreneurs, professional business people a little bit of insight into a piece of business, right? You could be a lawyer, but you want to learn about how your business markets and gets leads or sells advertising, or you might be in marketing and want to understand better focus research, whatever it might be. So talk to me a little bit about your role, your division, your industry. What do you do?
Yeah, for sure. So Ipsos is the third largest market research company in the world, global company. headquartered out of France. We have, I want to say it's 20 plus service lines. I can't remember the exact number, 22, 25, something like that. Probably a little more siloed than Ipsos would like us to be. And, we've tried over the years to kind of break some of those down. And I think in the time that I've been here, it's less siloed than it was initially, but like I think there's still more work to be done there. But me specifically, like I was saying earlier, so I'm in the creative excellence service line. So we are specialized in communications research. So advertising, specifically copy testing, is like the way I guess like you traditionally refer to it if anyone's familiar with that term. But essentially like validating advertisement before it goes on air, helping optimize, select which is going to be most effective, all that kind of stuff. Done primarily through large quantitative surveys and robust methodologies that have been developed, tried true for years, again validated to sales, all that kind of stuff. And that's where my focus really is. It's in communications. And what's interesting is, again, kind of themed with this podcast. So the person I was talking about that I was lucky to have as a manager initially, she was running our service line for a while, say maybe 6, 7 years ago, about that. And she recognized that a lot of vendors are doing the same thing. You want to go, you're a big brand, you want to test an ad, you're going to find a bunch of different vendors if you just Google it, right? And everyone's going to be like, oh, we have this, we have this, we have validation, we have this, and all that. And what she noticed is they're all researchers saying that, right? And the mentality of a researcher versus creative advertiser is very different. Are we going to be the third party that comes in at the end and grades the paper in front of the class and then says, here's your F, have fun, and then go back and then all those fucking researchers, or you know what I mean? Whatever it is. Or can we be creative experts that are more consultative? And yes, we have data and all that, but that's used as a tool to inform how we can help you get better advertising. So what she did is basically say we're no longer advertising researchers, we're creative experts. And she hired people from agencies to come in, from ad agencies to come in and train us with the lens of being in advertising. What are all these different creative concepts? What are like the creative themes, like speaking the lingo and all this kind of stuff? And that was her way of, I guess you could say, like, do more, get better, right? We're not just a research vendor. We are creative experts, but we had to push that and we had to go through training, ongoing training, regular training, all this stuff. And that's kind of where we've ended up. So yeah, we do research, but at the end of the day, we're creative experts and we have a lot of foundation of that, and we put out a lot of POVs and all these types of things based on that. And I think it's really strengthened our relationships, not just with our clients but with agencies, because that could be a very tenuous relationship previously, is the research vendor and the agency are just not in it because, again, we're the ones coming in and saying your baby's ugly. Well, now it's not so much that strict, right? No, we've been talking to you the whole time, and the way we talk, all right, you guys aren't just like some researcher guy that's doing whatever. You're in it with the advertising. You understand what we're trying to do. You understand the how we're trying to build consumer tension, how we're trying to resolve it, and how that's falling flat, and where that might be getting into a hiccup and all that. And essentially, that became our differentiators, that expertise. And our business, again, I've told you, we're like going like this, which is crazy because I'm like, I don't know how long that keeps going because it's like every year you do it. It's, oh, then you can grow more. I'm like, can we? Can we really? Um, but we'll see. Um, but we know that our competitors aren't doing that. They're maybe more flat, if not down. I mean, we're taking a lot of business from them. And I think a lot of it is that, like, we might get into this more. There's a lot of like cheap, quick research solutions coming out and things that can give you indications, but like the experience and expertise is not so easy to replicate. And so that being the differentiator, I think at this time at least, is helping us a lot in being able to stand out from the competition.
I think as software eats the world, including artificial intelligence, one thing that I'm keep harping on is that domain expertise is as valuable as it's ever been, maybe more valuable than it's ever been, because you can get sort of like a base level, maybe even mediocre with tools right off the shelf, whatever it might be. But then at the edge cases, you start getting really bad results, or you don't get the kind of data and
Hmm.
insights that you need. Is consumer focus groups, even with AI tools or whatever it might be, testing still helpful for medium and small businesses? Or is it something they just sort of put it on TikTok and see what happens?
No, I mean, like, there's there's a reality of put it on TikTok and see what happens. Like that's kind of like B testing. It's put
Right.
them both out there. Which one's better? Okay, cool. We'll go with that one. It's not the worst thing for a small to medium company. But that said, with AI, so obviously have thoughts around this within the industry. But like the specific question here is, I think taking a step back, the world of research, I think what it's going to come to is this: is like there's going to be two paths, and it's going to be, do I go with something that's expensive, slower, but gives me like legitimately solid insights from experts? Or do I go down the path of fast, cheap, pretty good insights? Okay to pretty good insights, and like which am I going to take? And I think even a lot of big companies are going to take the latter one. Like there's a lot of AI tools and stuff coming out, right, that make things seem really shiny and cool and fast and cheap. And I can see, SVPs, CMOs, people that be like, hey, we can cut our research budget by a tenth, and it looks good to us. Research isn't perfect at the end of the day, right? It's not. And if it was, I wouldn't have a job, because it'd be like, do this, and then that'll give you the perfect roadmap, but it doesn't exist. So let's say we can get you like 90% there. Someone that's like tons of our price gets you 60% there. I don't know. Is that good enough for a small medium company? Like it's better than the 10% you might have if you do no research, right? At least you've like reached to that scale. Do you need to go all the way to this tight validated Ipsos thing when you don't have this huge spend behind it? Probably not. But I think there's the middle ground there, right? And that's where these cheaper solutions will play for like small to medium sized companies. And I think there's a benefit of that for sure. I don't know if you want to delve fully into like AI conversation here. I think there's like things that are a little bit more snake oily with how with AI in terms of research, but then I think there's things that make sense in the way that it would be done.
I do want to ask about snake oil, but I think one question that isn't totally clear to me is, you've said a bunch of times, right? Did it work? We tested it. Did it work? How do you define that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in a pre-market environment here. So this is before an ad's being released out into the wild, right? And we're predicting the performance based on what we know from our surveys and what's worked and what we've been able to validate. And essentially, and hopefully this is answering the question, but the way our philosophy on advertising to be effective is it's got to be noticed and remembered. People have to know who it's for, and it's got to drive some sort of action, whether that's purchase, like visit a website, whatever it might be, talk to a doctor about it, whatever that action point is, like should be doing. There's something should be taken away, right? So that's a lens that we're using to evaluate, is this ad effective, right? And so those are kind of API measures that you would say, is it breaking through? How many people know it's for us? Are they taking action? You roll that all up into a number that has been validated. So if you reach a certain threshold of that number, we know that if you exceed this threshold, your ad is significantly more likely to drive a higher impact, a strong sales impact in market. You also get a bunch of diagnostics underneath it to understand the hows and whys, right? We have tons of ad ratings. So people being like, is it entertaining? Is it unique? Is it like, did it tell me something new? All this stuff to kind of understand, hey, where could this be falling short? We have open-end responses of like, what thoughts, ideas, reactions went through your mind while you were watching this ad, just to see like what's sticky. What are they recalling most often about it? What are things that like both positive and negative on that? We do on our online quantitative testing like facial coding. So it's like second by second emotional reactions. We ask them for webcam permission. If they give it to us, we flip it on the very first time they're seeing the ad, and it's literally like coding their facial reactions, right? And so then you can see that line. Okay, here's the happiness line where people are like positive towards it. Wait, what happened there? It went down. Oh, okay, it's that. Like, you know what I mean? So you can really diagnose an ad that way. So ultimately, that's how we would say an ad is quote unquote working or not. Is it doing the three things that we believe and over time have proven to show that makes effective advertising, and everything leading up to that point, because like a lot of times you're doing this in unfinished form, like saying earlier, you're doing like campaign ideas, or you're doing like storyboards that are drawn. You can't get a good read on like, is someone going to remember this, because it's not in its finished form. So like, what does it matter, right? Okay, I tested something that's hand drawn, it did really well. Well, when I produced it, I totally screwed it up, and now it sucks. You know what I mean? Like that can happen. It's definitely can happen. Or something might not test that well in an early stage, but you identify what you can do about it. And then when you implement those optimizations, you get to finish film, you do that and you end up with a great ad. So at that point, it's exploration. And it's more like, hey, is this relevant to you? What's working? What do you think of this storyline? Would you remember this? Getting into focus groups and things like that. But ultimately, it's that. It's like, if no one notices your ad, then what's the point? If no one knows it's for you, what's the point? And if it doesn't do anything, I won't go as strong to say what's the point, because you might just be building brand awareness, which in itself sometimes is what you're trying to do, especially with digital ads. But you don't want to waste that, right? If you have people's attention, tell them something and try to get them to do it.
I was just going to ask whether that means focus groups for brand awareness don't make sense, right? Because I do think that is one thing that in the marketing industry, we're starting to see a little bit of a return to fundamentals almost, which is this idea that like not everything's clickable. And even the whole metric of clickable is kind of made up in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And so another question I had on this, that you've used this term consumer tension a few different times.
Mhm.
Define that for me.
Well, it's basically finding a human truth or an insight of what is my brand trying to solve for, right? So, oh man, I always walk into the bathrooms in my house and I don't like the way they smell. Like, this is very basic, right? And I'm coming off with the top of my head, so it's not a great example. But let's say it's that, right? I have funky smells throughout my house in weird places. Kind of, maybe somewhat universal. A lot of people could probably relate to that. Well, Febreze has products that can come in and neutralize those odors with just the spray, or just, you know what I mean? It's that. It's like, what is like ultimately the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve for? Another one, Snickers. So tried and true candy bar for a long time, right? But they wanted to change who they were a little bit. So they're like, okay, let's go into this aspect of you're not you when you're hungry, right? When people are hungry, they kind of don't act like themselves. They kind of get like this. We have a product that has a lot of peanuts, protein, it's filling, all that. Snickers can satisfy your hunger and get you back to who you want to be. Snickers satisfies. Like, that's the ideal. That's the tension, is like, you're not you when you're hungry. So how can we solve for that? We can solve for that with our peanut packed chocolate bar that fills you up. So that's the tension, is what am I making you feel like I'm solving for? Because ultimately, if I'm like, hey, I got this really cool new pizza, and you're like, I don't care about pizza. What's the point, right? So like, I have to be fulfilling a need of some sort. So have I identified that need? Is it relevant? Is it somewhat universal in the sense that it doesn't apply to just Avro and Sal? It applies to a good portion of the population that is potentially going to buy our product.
That's really helpful to better understand kind of what you're looking for and measuring against, and what the goals are in these kind of marketing campaigns. Yeah. On the AI piece, I'm just curious, you've been in the industry a long time. AI, quote unquote, big AI, right? Machine learning, natural language processing, et cetera, is not new. It's just
Right.
not, right? It's kind of embedded in already so much of what we do. As you mentioned, you have facial algorithms that are measuring what I'm thinking basically by the micro movements of my face. That is all AI, right? That's an algorithm. But what we have is newer tools that are trying to leverage data patterning, large language models, unstructured data to give intent signals of some sort. And I'm just curious, you mentioned snake oil, and we won't talk about any specific,
No.
but I'm just curious your thought on like where this new version of AI fits in your space.
Yeah, for sure. I do think there's a role, and like the snake oil comment. So with research, I think that I said earlier, there's a lot of noise in research. It's just natural, right? Like, there's wobble, there's like respondents. At the end of the day, like, a lot of things are cut by demographic, right? There's a lot of ways that you could cut a demographic where you and I would fall in the same bucket. But at the end of the day, like, are we really reacting to everything like in the exact same way? Like, probably not, right? But like, oh, 40, father of father, like, you know what I mean? Immigrant dad, all this kind of stuff you can bring in, and it's like, oh, they match, but do we? So there's a lot of noise there. And so with AI, I think the snake oil part is, if any company is out there talking about basically synthetic respondents, or a way to gauge chat, like not chatbots, but like persona bots, almost like, hey, this tool has been programmed to act as your consumer. I don't know how much I would trust that. because consumers themselves are enough of an enigma to try to untangle, and now you've tried to like replicate that into a program, and like you expect like to have the answers coming from there that are going to be like relevant and insightful enough. That's where I get a little bit like skeptical on it, like when you're starting to promise that. I also think a lot of that stuff is trained on back data. It's backwards looking data, and so it's like how people have acted in the past, but does that mean they'll continue to act that way? In an advertising sense, I mean, we have an AI product, but we when we present it, we put a lot of guardrails around it, what its use cases are for and stuff. Don't replace your testing with it, because again, you're backwards looking data, right? And in theory, what could happen with that is if everyone moved to AI evaluation for advertising over time, you'd probably just have extremely similar ads, right? Because it's all going to be trained on the set of like, oh, if you do these 5 things, and I'm simplifying, if you do these 5 things, that's usually an effective ad. Okay, cool, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that. All right. So now every company is doing that, you know? And then you're also ignoring any macro factors, right? Like the context of the current times. Like in 2020, you test ads talking about people kissing and holding hands, that's not going to work. In 2024, you talk about pandemic, that's not going to work. You know, like ads, like how are people taking that? And there's like all these different things, and like an algorithm or like a set of data that an algorithm that has been trained on is not going to account for all that. All that said, I think like they can still get you closer, but I think where AI really works is like processing like massive amounts of data and like synthesizing it into takeaways and insights that like you can wrap your head around like pretty quickly, right? Like more tangibly, like in a way we do it if we have like a test with a lot of like verbatims, like open-end responses, like yeah, I could get manual coding to do it, but like that's like a person doing it and it's not that accurate anyway. I could read through these myself, or I can feed them into like an AI model and say, hey, summarize, highlight, theme it out, all this stuff, right? And it'll give me like a roadmap for this. Granted, I should check it because like sometimes it'll throw crazy shit in there, but like for the most part, like it's there and it cuts a lot of time. Like that's how like me and my team use it a lot for that kind of stuff to synthesize large sets down quickly. I think like it can be used for tools like personalized marketing is becoming a big thing, right? Like everyone wants to know that you're talking to me. And I think AI can like help do that. It can come up with like ways to like personalize at scale a little bit more than I don't know how you do it like previous to that. It'd be kind of hard, right? So I think like that's where some of what AI is doing is going to work. I think like they're good. It's good supplemental tools sometimes. Again, like do you trade all like if you're a big company, do you trade all like your research investment from being humans to AI all of a sudden? I don't think that's a good idea, but I think like certain things do you always need to be spending and waiting for as much time and money it takes to do some of these bulkier research projects? So like, can you get a pretty quick answer that you feel pretty good about and you have enough knowledge outside of that or other data sets that it aligns with and you can be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm fine with this being, not human intelligence that's giving me that answer.
Yeah,
At what
no, I
you're,
think that's
yeah.
really good advice, and I think it's good context within your industry specifically, right? Where it might fit, where maybe it'll improve, maybe it won't, but where you can use it in your stack, in your tools to do better work. It's been fascinating understanding kind of your journey, learning about your industry, your role, what you do. I, I think as we close out the podcast today, I'd love to get your take on what the audience could take home today. What do you want them to understand about your journey, how to be a better professional, whatever it might be?
It's a good question. I always go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I get out of the professional context and all that stuff. Build your self-awareness and understand yourself and understand how much is in your control versus how much isn't. And the stuff that isn't, just give it up and understand that it's not. But when you can't change situations, you can still change yourself and adapt to it. And I think understanding that and that in any situation you have the power to choose like how you're reacting and what your next step is going to be. And a lot of times we get so automatic in that we forget about it. It's like you tell me something, I just get mad. But like, really, there's a millisecond between you saying that and me feeling that way. And if I can expand that to a second, then I can stop and be like, wait, I won't get mad that time. So like understanding these concepts I think are the foundational tools that can like take you from where you are to a different type of level. Honestly, you build that level of self-awareness and understanding how much I can control like my reactions, my emotions, where I want to go with things. I can always choose, right? I can always choose. And if I'm aware of where I am, how I'm feeling, then I can address it too. So if I'm stressed, do I know that I'm stressed? Okay, I do. So then what can I do to fix it? You do those like things, and then you're in a good place, and then the sky's the limit.
That is powerful and insightful advice for anybody, young or old. And I thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and talking and chatting. Hopefully we'll do it again at some point and keep that conversation going.